I've recently downsized my board game collection because, one, they take up a hell of a lot of space, of which I unfortunately have very little, and if you have more than one hobby, well, your space is just completely evaporated anyway. And two, coronavirus doesn't really lend itself to a load of friends sitting around a table playing a game where everyone touches everything with their dirty, poisonous fingers. It was sad to see them go, but for the most part, I've kept the ones I love, and oh boy, do I love board games. It was something that I started to delve into about 5 years ago, thanks to wonderful channels like Shut Up and Sit Down, who present their reviews with such a comedic flair and with such enthusiasm that, honestly, they could tell me Uno was the best game in the world and I'd probably go and buy it. I already have it though. We all do. Modern board games have truly flourished in the past decade, but it wasn't always this way. Board games were popularly thought of as the boring thing you did once a year at Christmas time. It was the Monopolies or Operation, the Scrabble or Connect 4, or if you were a nerdy kid like me, it was Hero Quest. But if you were a nerdy kid like me who didn't really have any friends who were even close to your level of nerdiness, then Hero Quest was essentially this cool board game you had to play on your own because everyone else is out shooting cats with a BB gun or something. I don't know. I grew up in a pretty rough area. It was that or setting fire to cars or stabbing people. Anyway, I digress. Having no one to play board games with meant that video games were the option, and what better way to make a video game than to take a board game that doesn't exist and turn it into a video game, eh? You see where I'm going with this? Yeah, Dr. Drago's Madcap Chase is that thing I'm saying. Created by Bluebyte, the people responsible for such long-standing classics as the Battle Isle series, the Settlers series, and the Anno series. They weren't always just the purveyors of a series of series though, they did have quite a few games that, God forbid, didn't result in 13 sequels, and Madcap Chase was one such title. Released in 1995, to my applause, I played the game over and over and over again. On my own, because nobody else wanted to touch that shit with a 10-foot dice tower. I did, though. I loved Dr. Drago's Madcap Chase because it was unlike anything else at the time. It was a board game at heart, and while we had Hero Quest and Space Crusade, which were great, don't get me wrong, they were based on pre-existing entities. Dr. Drago was fresh and new. It incorporated elements of board games. It incorporated elements of TV shows. It incorporated the themes of films like Cannonball Run. It was literally everything I ever wanted. And I could play it with magical computer friends who didn't judge my nerdy hobbies. Take that, real-life people. So, what do you do in Dr. Drago exactly? Well, you pick a character, you pick a number of computer players to race against, and then you set off across Europe in, quite literally, a madcap chase to be the richest player. Each round consists of you and everyone else trying to reach a random destination picked out by the rather camp game show host.
The capital of Spain. Come on, what are you hanging about for? Off you go!
Each time someone reaches their destination, they win a massive sum of money, starting at €100,000 pound dollars and rising by some amount I can't be bothered to check. I'm going to guess 10%, and if I'm wrong, just ignore I said that. There's more than one way to make your riches, however. Each square you land on is shaded a different colour, and those colours correspond to the event that will happen when you land on it. Blue will give you a random amount of cash, red will take a random amount away, yellow will give you an event card to use, and grey or checkered squares will allow you to buy property. Yes, property. Apparently these contestants have time to stop off and buy up local businesses while they're also racing across Europe. What's more madcap than that? Buying businesses can earn you a consistent net income, and it also means your money is siphoned away as assets. This can come in handy for a number of reasons, but the main takeaway is, if you have cash and you're not going to use it for anything else, buy properties. Make money from doing nothing. It's a capitalist dream. There are some other squares you can land on. Purple, for instance, opens up a shop where you can buy event cards should you need a specific one that you haven't found through landing on a yellow space. This is handy, but it does mean you're sinking your money into something of a gamble. Putting money into property means you can sell that property when you need it and gain money from it while it's in your possession. Buying cards might give you a bonus advantage, but if that advantage doesn't put you ahead, then it's a net loss. There is an issue here too, one of readability. In a traditional board game, you can expect to have the rules of a given card printed directly on it, and for reasons unknown to me, Dr. Drago forgoes even the use of tooltips to explain what it is each of these things do. Something as simple as the 4 spaces card is pretty self-explanatory, but what does 0 do? What does Christmas do? What does Nessie do? The only way you're going to be able to find this out is to have the manual close to hand, and we all know by now that I refuse to look at the manual until I've already made 1,000 mistakes. But on a more serious note, it seems like a strange oversight to miss this. A good board game knows that readability is key. Understanding what something does at first sight is a gift, and requiring the manual to hand in order to understand what half of these cards do feels like a pretty silly mistake. You'll probably remember what they do over time, but if you are going to be playing with other people, it would have been much easier for them to simply mouse over the card and have it explained to them, but whatever, it is what it is. That's most of the basics explained anyway. You move around the world by rolling dice, only it's not dice, it's a slot machine, but let's be honest, it's clearly just dice. It gives you a number between 1 and 6, and that's how much you have to move. There's no stopping short, you move the exact number of spaces it tells you to. You can, of course, choose which route you take, so instead of, say, landing on a red space and losing money, you can take a different route and land on something sweeter at the cost of losing time heading toward your destination. And that might not seem like too big a deal, but it is. Oh, it is. Getting to the destination grants you an absolute ton of money in comparison to everything else, but not only that, once the first destination has been reached, the titular Dr. Drago comes into play. Whoever was the furthest away from the goal at that time will gain a new companion, and he's not a good one. Dr. Drago will, at the end of every single turn for that player, do something to ruin their life, be it spend a chunk of money, ruin one of their properties, or destroy one of their cards. He is an absolute blight, and hearing this noise will see you either giggling with joy as one of your foes constantly has their earnings burnt, or it'll have you gritting your teeth as he completely screws you over again and again. The only way to get rid of him, temporarily, is to either drive past someone else, passing on the parasite as you go, or use a push-off card to send him to someone else. But once that destination is reached again, if you're at the back of the pack, well, you're going to end up with him once again. Play continues for a set number of turns, up to a maximum of 300, at which point a winner is declared based on the total amount of money they've earned throughout the Madcap Chase. And that's that. It wouldn't be fair, however, to review the game in its entirety without at least bringing in another human player to the mix. He may not like retro games, he may not even like me, but I invited multiplayer Ian to take on Dr. Drago's Madcap Chase to really get a feel for how the game plays with more than just a bunch of bots. Here are the highlights of that play session. Why are waves and seasons switched off? Put them on. That's the last thing I wanted. Look how racist that is!
No, I want to be...
Hold on, you could have a look at them. Yeah. I like the look of the wages.
I want to see James Ford just because of the name.
James Ford.
Nice.
Oh, what should we call Vera?
You'll have to call him that Douglas guy because I don't like Douglas. After he insulted me so much on RimWorld.
The worst looking character, so I'm sorry, Binny, but that's the guy who requested it, so we might throw him in. She landed on it already. Christ. Jammy get. There she is.
What was her name again?
Douglas TV.
Oh, Douglas.
What colour was it? Red. Oh no, they're all bloody red.
Well, oh, here we go. You can knob off.
Douglas TV, the big cheater. 200 grand I've got now.
This game's wank. Nessie, how much is that?
50 grand.
What is it? Just get it.
Hooray! Movement, as long as it's not a red. Oh, you... This is what I tried to avoid last time. Right, I'm just going to have to do it.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to
I've got it better not be more than 5 grand or I've got to sell something.
Ooh.
510 quid left. You're a lot closer than I am.
Gutted.
Can't even afford any of that shite. I haven't got any cards, right. Useless. I've got nothing to do on my turns.
She's alright, twat.
Oh.
Oh,
Is he screwed your car?
Tactics.
Douglas is clearly well ahead.
Well ahead.
Getting 10 grand a turn as well.
Yeah. Oh, here he is, but it wouldn't melt. Look at him with his nice little 6 there off the bat.
It's constantly getting 6s. You big bollock.
Oh, Binny!
Binny, what?
What have I ever done to him? Oh, nice, yep. Perfectly fair game.
Bloody Douglas. And he's getting cards every turn. I lost a lot of capital on this round.
Oh, nice. I wouldn't have expected that at all. Of course he did. Of course he got a 1.
Jammy bastard. Well, there goes all of my assets. 6. Yeah! You just have to say it out loud. We're laughing at Binny for so long.
Slot machine, that mother. 1.
So if you say it out loud, that's what happens. You didn't say it early enough, to be
Fucking
fair.
hell, 2 1s.
Do you want blue, or do you want to pretend to buy something?
I want to die. Slot machine, that mother. Oh, come the fuck on. So I'm slowly losing all my cards, all my money, and I'm getting 1s, so I'm going to have him next time as well.
Basically just kicking the loser in the teeth. Oh, you're on the 8 away?
Yeah. Oh, yes! Absolutely nailed it. I'm getting really pissed off.
This is getting ridiculous, to be fair.
But how many goes has that been to get about 6 spaces?
Doesn't seem to take as much off them as he does off us.
He doesn't, does he?
He took like 19 grand off you at one point.
1 card.
My gondola company! That will declare the winner, because we're not playing for another 15, 18
Honestly, I don't
rounds.
think I could. Go for a fag.
We are at... I am third by 100,000. No, darling. Love you. Over 1.5 hours. 1.5 hours it took to get through not even half of the turns I'd set up. Now bear in mind that the default number of turns that Dr. Drago sets for you is 99. 9T9. I set this game up for 30. We managed 12. We managed 12 before both of us had simply had enough of Dr. Drago's madcap bullshit. Because here's the thing. Board games have moved on over the decades, and what was once a staple in board games of the past is now something that most people would balk at. Dr. Drago, for as much as I loved it when I was younger, is covered in the dust of antique board game design. There's a few issues at play here, so let me dot them out one by one. Firstly, dice rolling. There is nothing fun about dice rolling, especially when it's virtual, but when you tie dice rolling to movement, it just makes everything 10 times worse. Sitting at the back of the race and rolling 1s or 2s turn after turn while everyone else steamrolls ahead is not just frustrating, it's boring. You have no options to deal with. You are simply clicking to roll and clicking to move. Choices and agency are completely absent. So you have to rely on luck, and you have to rely on luck in multiple different ways. You have to rely on it for your rolls, you have to rely on it for the cards you pick up, you have to rely on it for the amounts you win or lose from the blue and red squares, you have to rely on it when a new destination is randomly picked. Luck dictates the game, and while you can change the course of fate through a well-timed use of an action card, it's few and far between. And the game is swingy. Swingy to the point where someone in last place can shoot up to first place in the space of 5 or 10 turns, and the game relies heavily on this swinginess in order to keep things from becoming stale. If you know who is going to win at the end of turn 3, then you're going to be instantly bored, but this also leads to the opposite effect of feeling as though most of your turns don't actually add up to anything. You are rolling the dice, you are moving, and you are constantly testing your luck, and often your patience, to see whether this turn will result in you pushing a step closer to victory. On the flip side, if you're in last position, and you keep rolling low, and you've got Dr. Drago spending your cash every turn, well, let's just say you're not going to be having a particularly fun time. It's like somebody kicking your nuts down the street after somebody else has already cut them off. Dr. Drago's Madcap Chase often feels like the final 30 minutes of a Monopoly game dragged out over the course of hours. You're playing the game, but you're not really playing the game. You're taking it in turns to roll the dice over and over again in the hopes that someone will win or someone will lose at some point. But it never seems to come. Dr. Drago is a game that relies on its length in order to get the best out of it. It requires multiple turns in order to simulate the race and asset purchasing mechanics. It relies on multiple players in order to keep the competition from becoming a game of tennis. And each of the things that make the game more interesting inflate the length of time it takes to actually get through just one session. In summary, the game is exhausting. It's exhausting and ultimately disappointing. Nowadays, there are multiple board and card games that have either been converted directly from their analog counterparts, or they're completely new affairs with designed from the ground up mechanics. And almost all of them have had the benefit of refined board game rules over the years. Dr. Drago has a grand idea at its heart, but its rule set is one that leans too heavily on the necessity to simply be a lucky goose. If you're someone who can stomach the length of time it takes to play a full game of Dr. Drago, and you have friends that would be willing to push that patience barrier alongside you, then perhaps you'll get some enjoyment here. But for those who have moved on to bigger and better things in board gaming, I suspect you'll run out of fuel long before you see a game finished.